These are the most interesting vintage photographs and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. As a child, Theodore Roosevelt, who suffered from asthma, was recommended by his doctor to smoke cigars to dilate the bronchi, a method adopted in 19th century medicine. The family rejected the advice, and Roosevelt began actively exercising to improve his health. War elephants were used by the Thai army until the end of the 19th century, including participation in armed conflicts until 1885. They served as vehicles, deterrents and mobile platforms for riflemen and artillery. In 1965, an American A-1 Sky Raider attack aircraft dropped a training bomb stylized as a toilet bowl, as a protest by the crew against bureaucracy and outdated procedures. The action had no military significance and became a symbol of military humor during the Vietnam War. This well-camouflaged alpine shelter from the First World War is located at an altitude of 2,860 meters in the Monte Cristallo Massif, Italy. It was used by Italian soldiers for shelter and surveillance during the high-altitude war against Austria-Hungary. A photograph from 1886-1887 showed a Meccan merchant with a Circassian slave dressed in traditional attire. In the Ottoman Empire at that time, the use of slaves of various origins, including people from the Caucasus, was widespread, especially as servants and concubines. The image shows clay tablets with cuneiform script from ancient Assyria, used as promissory notes, contracts, and letters. Such documents were created on raw clay, after which they were fired for durability and stored in special archives. The Soviet-era Malyash mobile cinema was created on the basis of a ZIS bus to show films in remote villages. Inside, there was a projector, a screen, and several seats for the audience. Jimmy Carter, born on October 1, 1924, became the first US president to be born in a hospital. Before him, most presidents, including Reagan and Bush Sr., were born at home, and 7 were born in log cabins. The Ilya Muromets was a 1913 Russian four-engine bomber aircraft that was ahead of its time. It was the first aircraft with an enclosed cabin, electric lighting, and a bathroom, used in both civil and military aviation. During World War II, William Patrick Hitler, Adolf Hitler's nephew, moved to the United States and joined the Navy in 1944. He actively distanced himself from his uncle and later changed his last name to hide the relationship. A man in traditional clothes performs a ski jump in St. Moritz, Switzerland, January 1938. The picture was taken during the festive events dedicated to the new year. A British officer practices bayonet combat with a rifle on a training ground during the Second World War. Suspended sandbags are used as moving targets, simulating an opponent in hand-to-hand combat. On January 10, 1863, the world's first steam-powered subway train began operating in London, running between Paddington and Farringdon. At the same time, there was a civil war in the United States, and a proclamation on the emancipation of slaves was adopted. The Atacama Giant is the largest known geoglyph of a human figure, about 119 meters high, located in the Atacama Desert in northern Chile. It dates back to about 1000 to 1400 AD and was probably used as an astronomical or ritual landmark by local cultures. Anne Frank, at the age of 6, is pictured with a skipping rope on an Amsterdam street next to her friend Sanne Lederman. The photo was taken in 1935, a few years before the start of the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands. The conflict over the pig between the United States and Great Britain began in 1859 on the San Juan Islands and lasted until 1871. The reason was a piglet shot by a farmer, after which both sides sent troops, but there was no fighting. The only victim was a British Marine who was hit in the eye with a stone. The only victim was a pig. Acrobat Fred Bradford performs a stunt on a high unicycle against the backdrop of Berlin architecture. The photo was taken in 1921 and became a symbol of street art in post-war Europe. The image shows a shopping list compiled by Michelangelo about 500 years ago. Since his servant was illiterate, the artist accompanied the names of the products with simple drawings. This sheet illustrates the practical approach of the great Renaissance master to everyday life. The photo shows one of the first mechanical toys, patented in the USA in 1871. The wind-up design imitated a crawling baby and was popular among girls despite its frightening appearance. The toy became an early example of the mass production of automatons in the children's industry. A group of circus performers with dwarf stature captured in a domestic setting in Paris, 1949. They were part of the popular post-war European variety show, performing in shows and performances all over France. In the 1940s, the British Office of Special Operations, SOE, considered the idea of mixing female hormones, estrogens, into Adolf Hitler's food. The goal was to gradually change his hormonal levels to make him less aggressive and more malleable. The plan remained under discussion and was never implemented. From July 14 to July 18, 1969, an armed conflict occurred between Honduras and El Salvador, which went down in history as the Football War. The formal reason was the qualifying match for the World Cup, but the real reasons were the migration and land crisis. The war lasted 6 days and claimed the lives of more than 2,000 people. In World War II, the United States dropped leaflets over Japan warning of imminent bombing. They identified specific cities, including Hiroshima, and urged civilians to evacuate. It was part of a strategy of psychological pressure on the population and the country's leadership. During World War II, the United States introduced a national speed limit of 35 miles per hour. This measure helped to save gasoline and rubber needed for the needs of the Army. The restriction was named Victory Speed as part of a mobilization campaign. In 1943, the United States temporarily minted 1-cent coins made of galvanized steel instead of copper, which was used for military needs. These steel pennies are easily distinguishable by their silver color and have become the only non-copper cents of the 20th century. Vesta Stout, working at a defense plant in the United States during World War II, invented a fabric waterproof tape, the future duct tape. After the refusal of her superiors, she wrote a letter to President Roosevelt, and her idea was approved and introduced into the Army to seal ammunition boxes. Inmates at a prison in Yangon, Burma, circa 1900, are chained to manual mill mechanisms and turn the shafts with their feet. Such hard labour was used by the British colonial authorities as a means of punishment and forced labour. The food parcel of the American Relief Administration, ARA, was intended for the starving population of Soviet Russia in 1921-1923. 117 pounds of products were sent for $10: flour, rice, sugar, fats, tea and condensed milk. In total, more than 1.1 million such humanitarian kits were delivered. In the photo, the senior foreman of divers, N.I. Orov, during the construction of the Dnieper Hydroelectric Power Station, Dnepro-GES, in September 1932. Dnepro-GES was one of the largest infrastructure projects of the USSR and a symbol of industrialization of the first 5-year plan. Japanese kamikaze pilots drink a farewell cup of sake before taking off on a deadly mission. Such ceremonies were held in the last hours of the pilots' lives as part of a ritual of honor and self-sacrifice during the Second World War. The Buddhist nuns in the photo are wearing traditional hairstyles with woven sheep's wool, an element of local culture that symbolizes belonging to a spiritual community. Such hairstyles are typical for remote regions of Tibet and have both practical and ritual significance. In the photo is Harry Fowles, one of the members of the real Peaky Blinders gang, which operated in Birmingham at the end of the 19th century. Although the group itself did not last long, its name became a collective image for street gangs of that time, and later inspired the creation of the television series of the same name. Summer of 1946, post-war Germany. People are relaxing by the water despite the fresh traces of the war. In the foreground you can see an improvised war grave with helmets on a cross. The photo reflects the contrast between the memory of the dead and the return to a peaceful life. In the 1920s, wearing stockings was a mandatory element of the women's dress code. It was considered indecent to appear in public with bare legs. However, due to the heat and the desire to emphasize the freedom of style, the girls began to roll up stockings below the knee. This coincided with the growing popularity of short dresses and the flapper movement. Rolled up stockings made it possible to simultaneously observe formal norms and visually violate them, which became part of the fashionable provocation of that time. During the siege of Leningrad, 1941-1944, more than 800,000 civilians died, mostly from hunger, cold, and shelling. This is more than the total civilian casualties caused by the bombings of Hamburg, Dresden, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki. The blockade became one of the most tragic humanitarian disasters of the Second World War. During World War II, the United States hired 29 native Navajo speakers to create a secret cipher. They have developed a unique system for encoding military messages based on their native language, which is incomprehensible to the enemy. This code has never been cracked during the entire war and played a key role in operations on the Pacific Front. A bread boy in Milan, 1915. During the First World War and economic difficulties, children often worked from an early age, performing hard physical labor, including delivering groceries to their homes. Alabama, 1956. A black family drinks water at a fountain with a sign saying, "Only for colored people." Next to it is the same one, but only for whites. Segregation was legal until 1964 and clearly deprived people of equal rights, despite their dignity and appearance. Moscow, late 1980s. Buying groceries using a passport with a Moscow residence permit is the standard of the era of scarcity. A residence permit determined access to goods. The people in the queue still don't know what's ahead: the collapse of the USSR and the changes of the 90s. USA, 1950. To sell ammonium sulfate, Ortho used models in outfits made from bags of fertilizers. The unusual advertisement worked. The boring product instantly attracted attention. London, 1940. Members of the British LDV, Local Defence Volunteers, volunteer force during the Battle of Britain. Due to the acute shortage of equipment, many fighters did not have uniforms and weapons. They were given hunting rifles, homemade grenades, and improvised explosive devices. California, 1979. A man makes a call on an early car phone, the forerunner of modern cell phones. Such devices were mounted in the trunk, connected to a handset in the cabin, and operated via radio communication. The price and subscription fee were high, and it was available to only a few. Sweden, the 1920s. A cyclist rides along a country road in a makeshift insulated cabin attached to a frame. This design protected from snow, rain, and wind, turning an ordinary bike into a mobile shelter. This is an early example of climate adaptation of transport without the involvement of industrial solutions. London, 1936. Firefighters practice rescue techniques on Eva Riley's intensive care unit, a device designed to revive suffocation victims. The mechanism rocked the body, stimulating breathing and cardiac activity. This is one of the early solutions in the field of emergency medical care. The year is 1943. Frank Sinatra is at the peak of his popularity. He was surrounded by enthusiastic female fans, kissing and asking for an autograph. The picture became a symbol of the phenomenon of Bobby Soxers, young girls who adored Sinatra. This is one of the first outbreaks of mass teen culture in the United States. The year is 1922. Bessie Coleman, the first African-American woman with an international pilot's license, poses with her Curtiss JN-4D. She completed her studies in France, as she was rejected in the United States because of her gender and race. After returning, she became an airshow star and an anti-segregation fighter. This is a massive forged key with an ornate handle, typical of the Viking Age. It was used to lock chests with valuables around the 9th, 11th centuries. The shape of the beard, in the form of the number 5, is unique and was selected for a specific lock, which provided additional protection against burglary. Such keys were often worn on a chain attached to a belt, as a symbol of the status and wealth of the owner. 2 fire helmets made in France at the end of the 19th century. They were designed to protect the respiratory system while extinguishing fires in smoke-filled rooms. The design included a sealed housing with round filters and ventilation valves, as well as an air supply system. These devices became an early stage in the development of personal protective equipment for firefighters. A couple with a visual impairment is walking down the street with a child in their arms. Both adults use white canes, which indicates complete blindness. The photo was taken in Budapest in 1984. The image shows an American consolidated B-24 Liberator heavy bomber from World War II. One of the largest production plants owned by Ford produced these aircraft in Willow Run, Michigan, at a record speed of 1 aircraft every 63 minutes. This was made possible by conveyor assembly, which was first used in the aviation industry on such a large scale. Leonardo da Vinci's sketch of a bear demonstrates his interest in anatomy and respect for animals. According to his memories, he bought animals in the markets to set them free. Doris Miller, Koken on the battleship West Virginia, became a hero when he took control of an anti-aircraft gun and opened fire during the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, the first African American to be awarded the U.S. Navy Cross. 5 women demonstrate the evolution of the women's bathing suit from 1890 to 1932. From left to right, the changes are visible, from fully enclosed outfits with pantaloons to more open-fitting models. Alain Delon and Claudia Cardinale during a break from filming in Sicily, 1962. The actor is sitting on a donkey and Cardinale in a bright outfit is posing next to him, holding the animal by the leash. Leonid Brezhnev with a gun against the background of a slain deer during an official hunt in a snowy forest, USSR, 1970. Such trips were regularly organized for the party elite through the state security and security services. Prince Charles poses with members of the Spice Girls group at a charity event, Great Britain, 1997. During the meeting, Geri Halliwell kissed him on the cheek and put her hand on his buttock, which caused a public outcry as a violation of royal protocol. A Great Dane named Juliana has been awarded the Blue Cross Medal twice in the UK. During World War II, she prevented a fire by defusing an incendiary bomb and rescued the owners from a burning house. The medal was awarded for bravery. American M1 Abrams tank on the background of the burning branch of Davidoff Community Building after the assault by the FBI and ATF, Waco, Texas, 1993. As a result of the 51-day siege, more than 70 people were killed, including sect leader David Koresh. A student couple kisses next to a mummified body at the University of South Florida Museum, 1940. The mummy is displayed at a window in one of the exhibition halls of the campus. A group of Soviet soldiers performs morning exercises in the snow, USSR, 1965. The lesson takes place without outerwear in the mountains at low temperatures as part of physical training in winter service conditions. Viet Cong women carry boxes of ammunition along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, Vietnam, January 2, 1968. The movement takes place at night, in conditions of full combat readiness during the active phase of the Vietnam War. Nikola Tesla suffered from a severe form of obsessive-compulsive disorder and had an aversion to pearls. He refused to associate with women who wore pearl jewelry. Abraham Lincoln approved the creation of the United States Secret Service on April 14, 1865, the day of his assassination. A few hours later, he was fatally shot by John Wilkes Booth during a performance at the Ford Theatre in Washington. The ancient Greek silver didrachma, minted in the city of Eretria around 500 BC. On one side, there is a cow, on the other, a stylized octopus in a square frame, typical of early Greek numismatics. Winston Churchill on a stretcher after being hit by a car on Fifth Avenue, New York, 1931. He suffered a fractured hip and ribs, but soon recovered and continued his visit to the United States. The charred trunk of a giant sequoia tree after a forest fire, California, 1948. Despite severe internal damage, the tree continued to grow due to the high fire resistance of the bark. German aerial photo of the destroyed Dnepro GES Dam, September 1941. The explosion was organized by Soviet troops during the retreat to hinder the advance of the Wehrmacht and disrupt the infrastructure of the region. A man helps a woman to get on a bicycle in the courtyard of a building, Italy, 1973. The scene was captured as part of a photo shoot or film production, as evidenced by the stage nature and partial nudity. Until the 17th century, beer was often used in Europe for medicinal purposes, including facilitating childbirth. It was believed that a warm, low-alcohol drink reduces pain and soothes. The image shows an engraving with a brewer from an early printed book in German. Visual effects specialist John Fulton works with a scale model of a sailboat during filming at Universal Studios, USA, 1956. The scene demonstrates the practical use of miniatures and water effects in pre-war cinematography. Actors Josette Day and Jean Marais as Belle and the Beast on the set of the French film Beauty and the Beast, directed by Jean Cocteau, 1946. The film became a classic of art house cinema and was notable for its innovative visual effects. A man in a suit poses astride a pig in a yard with a wooden fence, circa 1920. The photograph is made in the genre of everyday portrait and reflects the rural humour of that time. A makeshift treehouse with a suspended ladder and a cable car system, circa 1900. The structure is located between two trunks and is located against the background of a residential area with typical architecture of the late 19th century. A tourist attraction is a house built into the hollow trunk of a giant sequoia tree, Lilly Redwood Park, California, mid-20th century. The facility was advertised as a world-famous treehouse on the Redwood Highway. A group of Polish children during a medical examination conducted by SS officers, 1940. As a result of the procedure, the future fate of the children was determined within the framework of the policy of the occupation authorities. Visual reconstruction of the Pyramid of Chephren in Giza. From above, an assumed view from about 2500 BC with a polished white limestone veneer and a golden pyramidion. From below, a modern state without an outer shell. The cladding was partially dismantled in the Middle Ages. A stage scene from the filming of the Japanese film Admiral Yamamoto, 1968. The actors are on a scale model of an aircraft carrier used to simulate naval battles during the Second World War. Carrie Fisher and Peter Mayhew during the filming of Star Wars, Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, 1979. Fisher plays Princess Leia, and Mayhew is dressed as Chewbacca. The scene was shot in a pavilion with decorations of a space cruiser. A married couple in pajamas does morning exercises while listening to a radio broadcast in Germany, 1925. The scene was shot during the era of the Weimar Republic against the background of the growing popularity of home radios. German advertising poster for Fanta drink, 1940s. The first version of the drink was created in Nazi Germany from local ingredients due to the Coca-Cola trade blockade during World War II. The name comes from the word fantasy, imagination, in German. Dan de Jeff Jeffries applies a flame-shaped pattern to a custom car, Los Angeles, late 1950s. One of the pioneers of pinstriping, he worked with famous car dealerships and became a symbol of the post-war American custom culture. A young Japanese man in traditional samurai armor poses among cryptomeria in Nara, Japan, circa 1920. The outfit is stylized to resemble the armor of the Kamakura period, probably for a ritual photo shoot in memory of the military heritage of the family. View of Manhattan, immersed in smog, New York, 1966. The photo reflects the difficult environmental situation before the creation of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, founded in 1970 amid growing public concern about air pollution. Women in traditional costumes of the Russian Empire, 1880s. On the left is a festive North Russian outfit with a coconut, sundress and lots of jewelry. On the right is a more closed set with oriental elements typical of the Volga region. Clothing reflects regional differences and social status. Flying biplane models, 1912. The photo was taken using the cyanotype technique, presumably in the private workshop of the Solbrig family, who were interested in aviation modelling at the beginning of the 20th century. Shavuot religious service in Buchenwald, May 18, 1945. Jewish prisoners, Holocaust survivors and US Army soldiers gathered for a prayer, led by chaplain Herschel Schachter. Many of the participants are in camp clothes, among them teenagers and men who have recently been released. American women's fashion, 1945. 7 models showcase stylish images of the post-war era, selected by the Lord and Taylor department store. The outfits feature strict silhouettes, an accent on the shoulders, shirt collars, brooches and pearl jewelry. Opium Den in Beijing, 1908. Men in worn-out clothes use opium in a dilapidated room. In the foreground is a lying addict with an opium pipe. Behind it is a Buddha statue, partially destroyed, probably in a former temple. The photo captures the peak of opium addiction in China, before the fall of the Qing dynasty. John Wilkes Booth, left, as Mark Antony in the play Julius Caesar, 1864. The production took place in New York, and his brothers Edwin and Junius Brutus also played in it. The play about the assassination of the dictator coincided with the theme of Booth's thoughts, an ardent Southerner and supporter of the Confederacy. A year and a half later, he shot President Lincoln. A heavily damaged American B-17 bomber after a raid on Cologne, Germany, 1944. The nose of the aircraft was completely destroyed, but the crew managed to reach the base. The photo became a symbol of the survivability of the B-17 Flying Fortress and the heroism of American pilots in World War II. Ernesto Che Guevara, Minister of Industry of Cuba, at the United Nations Trade Conference in Geneva, August 28, 1965. His participation in the costume of a revolutionary, not a diplomat, caused an international outcry and became a symbol of Cuba's opposition to the capitalist world. Diver Jim Jarrett in an armoured Tritonia suit before descending to the wreck of the Lusitania liner, 1935. The Tritonia suit, developed by the British company McDuffie, allowed diving to a depth of more than 100 metres and maintain mobility thanks to sealed hinges. These tests were among the first in deep-sea archaeology. Franklin D. Roosevelt at the Civilian Conservation Corps CCC camp, 1933. The CCC program was created to combat unemployment during the Great Depression. Over the past 9 years, about 3 million young men have participated. They were engaged in forest restoration, road construction and erosion control, receiving food, shelter and payment, part of which was sent to their families. Rural school students in Missouri, 1920s. The photo reflects the realities of the American countryside. Most of the children are barefoot, in work clothes. The training took place in simple wooden buildings, and teachers often combined teaching and household work. The USSR, the end of the 1960s. Female students solve formulas on asphalt while preparing for the exam. Using a sidewalk instead of a board, is a common practice in conditions of shortage of premises and equipment. The priority is technical education. Great Britain, Sheffield, November 27, 1942. Female steelworkers replaced men in steel mills during World War II. They provided the work of the military industry. The cover of Smena, July 16, 1988. Komsomol girls in bikinis with pitchforks, haymaking as a glossy performance. The late USSR is trying to flirt with the Western approach, labour plus body, a Tureku's ideology of perestroika. London, the beginning of the 20th century. The British vacuum cleaner Conwa Mobile vacuum cleaner is a bulky machine that arrived on call. The hose was pulled directly into the windows of the houses. The service is expensive, elite, and a symbol of progress. The first wave of mechanised cleaning before the advent of home models. July 1975. The American Apollo is approaching the Soviet Soyuz 19, the first international space docking in history. Against the backdrop of the Cold War, the crews of the two superpowers shake hands in zero gravity for the first time. Technology, system compatibility, and political will all converge in this historical frame. London, 1952. The first female police officer on duty at Liverpool Street Station. Before that, women in the police did not patrol the streets. The picture captures the moment when the British police first entrusted a woman with a full-fledged service. Experimental jet scooter, 1931. The device was powered by a powder accelerator. The controls are manual without brakes. Helmet and goggles are the only protection. Oscar A. Solbrig drives an early Curtiss biplane pusher, circa 1914, Iowa, USA. The design with a rear propeller and an open cockpit was used for training and recreational flights. Early aviators often built and tested their own machines, without instruments, seatbelts, or landing guarantees. British tankers of the 11th Armoured Division treat Dutch children to chocolate. Filmed on September 22, 1944, during the liberation of the Netherlands from the Nazis. For the locals, it was the first taste of freedom in 4 years of occupation. After the war, Franz Böttger, a warden at Dachau, was tracked down and captured by his surviving victims. In the picture, Dachau survivor Michael Pellis personally approaches and identifies Böttger at the trial. The year is 1945. A prehistoric tunnel in Brazil, dug by Megatherium, a giant ground sloth that lived about 10,000 years ago. The diameter of the passage, the claw marks and the geological composition confirm that this is not a natural cave, but the remains of an ancient burrow. The Eskimos of Alaska and Arctic Canada use glasses made of bone, wood and horn, with narrow slits to protect against snow blindness. These glasses block the ultraviolet light reflected from the snow, reducing the strain on the eyes. Samples dating back more than 2,000 years are known, which is one of the earliest forms of optics in history. The woman in the photo is the Bulgarian soothsayer Vanga, who has been blind since childhood. In the 1990s, hundreds of people came to her every day, from ordinary peasants to politicians. Poster from the Second World War. Great Britain collects aid for the USSR. On the bus, there are portraits of Churchill and Stalin under the slogan, "Comrades in Arms." Yesterday, they were enemies by ideology. Today, they are allies by necessity. Politics gives way to survival. Dog sledding instead of horses is the reality of poor areas of Europe at the beginning of the 20th century. The Netherlands, 1906. Carts with groceries and children were pulled by dogs. The legal ban appeared only in the middle of the century. Russian soldiers in Galicia, 1916, participate in an impromptu game. Kneeling. The warriors line up in a circle, sitting on each other's lap, creating a living spiral. It was a way to keep warm. Take your mind off the frontline routine and keep your morale up. Homemade wire machine, Maun, Botswana, 1974. Local children made toys from improvised materials, wire, cans and tires. Despite his poverty, his imagination and ingenuity made his childhood intense. US Marines in Beijing, June 1900. Soldiers prepare for an operation to lift the siege of the diplomatic quarters during the Yihetuan Uprising. Boxer Rebellion. The United States, along with the international forces of 8 powers, intervened to protect their missions and citizens. The Nazi doctor conducts racial classification according to the colour of the iris. Germany, 1936. Such surveys were part of the eugenics programs of the Third Reich, aimed at determining Aryan origin within the framework of the racial ideology of the Nazis. Moonshine is poured out the window during a raid by federal agents. USA, 1925. During the Prohibition era, the police seized illegal alcohol en masse and destroyed it on the spot, pouring it directly onto the street. In the photo, a man is trying to catch a stream of moonshine in a glass despite the ban. Kavsurian warrior in traditional chainmail. Georgia, 1877. The Kavsurs are a mountainous people in the Caucasus who have long maintained a medieval military system. Even in the 19th century, they went into battle in chainmail with swords, shields, and guns. A baboon named Jackie officially enlisted in the 3rd South African Infantry Regiment during the First World War. He wore a uniform, followed orders, saluted officers, and was even wounded in battle. Jackie wasn't just a mascot. He was listed in the army as a soldier with a ration, service record, and real rank. Polish wrestlers Adam Sandurski and Jan Falandis in the photo on the left, the Olympics in Moscow, 1980, in the photo on the right, decades later. Even years later, Sandurski still raises his friend by the hand, as before. A farm near Coldwater, Texas, 1936. This house is still inhabited, but there are dead fields and deserted lands all around. It was the era of the Dust Bowl, a series of dust storms that engulfed the Great Plains of the United States and Canada. Millions of hectares turned into wastelands, and thousands of farmers were forced to leave their lands. An elephant, mobilized by German troops, drags logs. Germany, the First World War. Due to the shortage of draft vehicles, the Germans used circus elephants to work at the front. A Jewish family is hiding from the Nazis in a basement. Amsterdam, 1945. Thousands of Jews in the Netherlands have spent years in hiding, fleeing deportation. The living conditions were extremely cramped, with no windows or ventilation. The food squad seizes bread from the peasants during the policy of war communism. Russia, 1918. Detachments were sent to villages to forcibly confiscate surplus food. This caused massive resistance and famine among the rural population. The shoe collection of Imelda Marcos, wife of Philippine dictator Ferdinand Marcos. Manila, 1988. After the overthrow of the regime, more than 2,500 pairs of shoes were discovered in her palace, a symbol of luxury against the backdrop of extreme poverty in the country. Café Paulet in a real IL-18 aircraft. Yevpatoria, USSR, 1987. The decommissioned airliner was converted into a popular cafe and installed among residential buildings as part of a Soviet experiment to create original public spaces. Princess Fatima, Afghanistan, 1921, an aristocrat from the Barakzai dynasty. During her visit to Europe, she conducted negotiations on Afghan independence. She advocated for reforms and women's education. The photo shows a combination of a hijab and a man's tie as a symbol of the transition between tradition and modernization. A girl is watching the Soyuz 19 launch broadcast. USSR, 1975. The Soyuz Apollo mission is the first joint flight of the USA and the USSR, a symbol of warming in the midst of the Cold War. Launch from Baikonur, July 15, 1975. The first match between Real Madrid and Barcelona began in 1902. Later, it became the legendary El Clásico. Wedding in the USSR, 1960. Newspapers instead of tablecloths, a minimum of treats, the era of severe shortages. Even the most important day passed modestly. Children launch paper airplanes from the roof of an apartment building. New York, 1968. The era without gadgets, the street, the roof and fantasy replaced everything. Ford management analyzes 76 scale models to approve the body palette for the 1953 line of cars. Each model is an exact copy of the future car with a unique colouring. The decision has affected millions of production cars. Astrakhan, 1922. Fishermen caught a beluga with a length of over 5 meters and a weight of more than a ton, the largest recorded catch on the Volga. Such fish could produce up to 200 kg of black caviar. The real king is the catch. Marlene Dietrich, 1936. SS Normandy liner. The Hollywood legend is sailing to Europe with more than 20 suitcases. Among the luggage are hat boxes, cases for stage costumes and personal mirrors, each with the initials MD. The style is on the level and in the open ocean. Restorers of the Colosseum, Rome, 1930. Workers without insurance walk along the upper tier of the amphitheatre, carrying a ladder and equipment. The initial stage of restoration of the ancient Roman monument after centuries of neglect. Fans of the Beatles in the same frame. On the left is 1964, the day the band arrived in the USA. The photo was taken by Ringo Starr. On the right is 2013, the same company in the same pose, almost 50 years later. Biplane collision with a church, 1920s. A rare shot that captures the moment of a real crash. The pilot hit the steeple of a wooden church at low altitude. The fuselage was torn apart. The pilot survived but was seriously injured. The tower was rebuilt from scratch. The photo has become a symbol of the early, dangerous era of aviation. USA, 1964, the Beatles concert. The crowd screams so loudly that the policeman in the front row has to cover his ears. The sound of fan ecstasy drowned out even the music. Fritz von Opel and the RAK-2 rocket car, Germany, circa 1928. This is one of the first jet-powered vehicles in history. The car was equipped with 24 solid-fuel rockets and accelerated to 238 km/h on the RVUS highway in Berlin. The experiment became a sensation and a symbol of the ambitions of the early rocket era, long before space programs. The Argentavis magnificens is the largest known bird in history. It lived about 6 million years ago in what is now Argentina. The wingspan reached 6.5 to 7 meters. The weight was up to 70 kilos. Despite its size, the bird was able to fly, probably using updrafts like modern condors. The found remains became a sensation in paleontology. Alexander Zas is a legendary strongman of the early 20th century, known by his stage name, Samson. In the photo, he is carrying an adult horse on his shoulders, one of his signature tricks. Zas became a symbol of indomitable will and the founder of static, isometric training, conquering Europe in the 1930s. Women of the imperial court on Palace Square, early 1900s. In fancy dresses and with flowers in their hands, they greet the guard units before the parade. Harriet Tubman is a former slave who became one of the most influential figures in the struggle for the abolition of slavery in the United States. Since 1849, she has conducted about 13 missions rescuing enslaved people through a network of secret underground railroad routes. 2 Soviet girls are returning from a ski trip. The photo was taken in the 1950s. The skis and poles are made of wood, and the clothes are warm and casual. Sport in the USSR was an obligatory part of youth education. Chief Seattle, c. 1786-1866, was a leader of the Suquamish and Duwamish tribes. He advocated peaceful relations with white settlers during the colonization of the northwest coast of the United States. The city of Seattle bears his name. Russia, the beginning of the 20th century. The sign reads, "Stopping horses is strictly prohibited. The fine is 3 rubles. Despite the ban, the coachman still left the cart in this place, which highlights the typical disregard for the rules. New York, 1889. Men spend the night in a crowded room of an apartment building on Bayard Street, renting a place for 5 cents. Similar 5-cent bunks were common among the poor and immigrant workers. USA, 1886. Joseph M. Chrisman's 4 daughters pose outside a turf house in Custer County, Nebraska. Such dwellings were built from dense layers of earth due to the lack of wood on the plains. Alaska, the end of the 19th century. A gold digger with a weapon and full camping gear stands next to a dog carrying part of the cargo. Such expeditions were part of the Klondike Gold Rush. Chicago, 1932. The children climbed a tree near the stadium to watch the Chicago Cubs baseball game for free. Such scenes were commonplace before the advent of fences and guards. Alain Delon and Romy Schneider backstage at the Théâtre de Paris, France, 1961. Both were at the peak of their popularity and were in a romantic relationship. Soviet caramel candies from the 1920s with a propaganda wrapper. On the wrappers are images of Lenin, Marx, Trotsky, and symbols of the revolution. Such sweets were used as an element of propaganda in everyday life. Female bodybuilder of the late 19th, early 20th century USA. Such artists performed in circuses and variety shows, demonstrating their physical strength. The photo reflects the early interest in women's strength sports in the Victorian era. Demonstration of a prototype bulletproof vest in the USA, 1924. The inventor allowed shooting at himself at point-blank range to prove the effectiveness of protection. The test was carried out with a .38 caliber revolver. Wrestler Mildred Burke files her nails, holding the journalist in a grip. The year is 1947. Burke is one of the first female wrestlers to achieve fame in the United States. In 2024, the film The Queen of the Ring was shot about her. Gachina, 1941. Museum staff pack items from the palace collection for evacuation. In the first months of the war, almost 12,000 exhibits, including furniture, porcelain, paintings and sculptures, were removed from the Gachina Palace. A New Zealand soldier stands in a fuel canister warehouse. Italy, 1943. Canisters with 3 handles were a German invention, but soon became the standard among the Allies. In the USA, they were called jerrycan, from the nickname Jerry, which referred to the Germans. 17-year-old Elizabeth Taylor and Collie Lassie sign a contract for filming. USA, 1943. The actress played with Lassie in the movie Lassie Comes Home, and since then has remained one of the symbols of the golden era of Hollywood. The battleship Slava after the Battle of Moonsund, October 1917. This Russian ship fought against the German Navy in one of the largest naval battles in the Baltic during the First World War. Having received serious damage, the Slava could not retreat due to low precipitation and was flooded by the crew so as not to get to the enemy. Queen Elizabeth II during the coronation celebrations, London, 1953. She wears one of the most recognisable crowns of the British Empire, and the coronation itself was the first in British history to be broadcast on television. A French alpine shooter practices firing a Thompson submachine gun on a rope, September 1942. The exercises took place at the training centre of the 6th Battalion of the Alpine Riflemen, located in Grasse, France. The fighter belonged to the Vichy troops, a collaborationist regime that collaborated with Nazi Germany. A rare shot, Marilyn Monroe in the form of Zelda Zonk, the pseudonym under which she hid from fans. A black wig, altered makeup, that's how she secretly went to the movies and walked the streets, remaining unrecognised. In the 1940s, parties called Evenings for Ladies became popular in the United States. At these parties, the ladies could do all the same things that men do in bars: smoke cigars, play cards, order strong drinks, and watch the show. St. Petersburg, 1912-1914. Professor Vladimir Bekhterev demonstrates hypnosis to students of the Military Medical Academy. This is one of the first systematic scientific studies on suggestion and psychotherapy in Russia. Bekhterev brought hypnosis out of mysticism and laid the foundation for Russian neuroscience. Arnold Schwarzenegger was already a bodybuilding champion at the age of 18, but even before Hollywood. Next to him is his classmate. Photos from the time when the future star was just beginning her path to international recognition. German soldiers marched to the Soviet border on the morning of June 22, 1941, the beginning of Operation Barbarossa and the Great Patriotic War, a symbolic and ominous scene amidst crosses and fog. A ventriloquist with a doll. USA, circa 1870. One of the earliest examples of stage ventriloquism. Today, such a photo looks ominous, but back then it was a popular form of entertainment. Jonas Salk with samples of the first polio vaccine, 1955. Its development stopped one of the worst epidemics of the 20th century. The vaccine has saved millions of children around the world. Australia, 1958. The man gets the winnings after the jackpot in the local lottery. Thick wads of money and a wide smile are a moment of real triumph. Egypt, 1910. The colossi of Memnon are 18 metre statues of Pharaoh Amenhotep III that have stood for more than 3,000 years. These stone giants guarded the entrance to the funerary temple, which was almost completely destroyed by time and earthquakes. Antique wooden walkers from Georgia. The child was placed in a ring mounted on a rotating lever. He could walk in a circle without leaving the veranda. Moscow, 1920. A queue at a public bathhouse. People with brooms stand for hours in the cold to get warm. In an era of ruin and scarcity, the sauna has become a rare opportunity for hygiene and escape from the cold. 1943, Lapland. Wehrmacht soldiers stage an impromptu show in women's clothing, a common practice to boost morale at the front. American soldiers with an M20 grenade launcher in an ambush during the Korean War, 1950. These anti-tank weapons played an important role in deterring North Korean armoured vehicles in the early months of the conflict. Employees of the Louvre extract the Mona Lisa from the hiding place where it was kept during the war. In 1945, Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece returned to its place after being evacuated from the Nazis. A Soviet soldier in white camouflage fires a DP-27 machine gun during the Winter War. 1939, Finland, fierce fighting in the snow at 40 degrees Celsius for the safety of Leningrad. A Soviet peasant exchanges workdays for groceries. The sheet shows how much he earned during the season. Until 1966, in the USSR, they did not pay money to collective farmers, but settled with rations. Bathing etiquette of the early 20th century. Women in tight dresses and stockings, men in striped suits. The 1906 photo clearly shows what a modest beach vacation looked like in the era of strict morals. Special cups with a side for moustaches appeared in the 19th century in Great Britain. The invention allowed gentlemen with moustaches to drink hot tea without risking spoiling their styling with wax. The giant solid granite bathtub was made for Alexander the First in the early 19th century. The weight of the structure is about 50 tons, and its transportation to the palace was considered an engineering feat of its time. South Vietnamese army soldiers use war elephants to patrol the impenetrable jungles and rivers in the Baden area. June 1964, the border area with Cambodia. Young ballerinas in the USSR, 1941. In the moment before the world collapses around them, they are just waiting for their turn to rehearse, with dreams that will soon face war. The first service car for lanterns, Philadelphia, 1910. The machine made it possible to safely and quickly maintain street lighting without stairs, an engineering breakthrough for urban infrastructure. Kit Moby at the dental checkup in Marineland Park, Florida, 1964. A symbolic photo that highlights the importance of taking care of health, even among marine giants. Princess Elizabeth, the future Queen Elizabeth II, as part of the school swimming team. London, 1939. The photo captures the moment of the Sports Award presentation, a rare and warm shot from the pre-war childhood of the monarch. Compact three-wheeled car Messerschmitt KR200, 1954. A German aircraft manufacturer during the war switched to the production of micromobiles in the context of a ban on aircraft production. If you liked it even a little bit, please like it, subscribe to the channel and write your opinion in the comments.